Earlier in my career, I was in sales at a major specialty plastics compounder. We used to have a pretty high commercial standard, and we had a deal autopsy process. It wasn't because anybody was in trouble. We just believed that if you're not learning from the deals that you lose, then you're just guessing at the ones that you win. And we went through deal after deal. We questioned everything. We always started with the things that we could control ourselves, the sales process, the relationships, and then, it expanded into the proposal, the product. And what we came back to quite often over and over was not something I had expected earlier in my career. We went through a period of time where the number one business reason we were losing deals was our input costs were wrong. Now, I want to be careful here. I mean, when I was younger, I certainly wasn't, and I would have told you that it's procurement's problem to fix. It's about accountability. It's about their process. I wasn't gracious about it, and looking back, I mean, even at the time, I knew I was wrong about the framing because when we dug into it, there's multiple layers to this thing. Foundationally, it is very difficult for the plastic purchaser to have more information and access to the right information. The suppliers have data that actually shares, you know, thousands of transactions in different regions, real buyer to seller transactions. It's just something on the buyer side of the table hasn't been as available, especially on a timely basis. So part of the problem is you'd have a sales team building quotes on resin cost estimates that were 4 to 6 to 8 weeks stale, and or based on the last invoice or based on what they heard. You can button those things up with process, but if the input costs are still too high, that foundation is going to be wrong, and sometimes it's high, sometimes it's too low, but it's going to both end up costing you. I had several conversations at the end of last week with commercial leadership in the plastics processing world. I want the sales leaders at the injection molders, the film extruders, the blow molders, the roto molders, anyone where resin is your dominant cost. I mean, let's really think through this. Resin can be 40 up to 60, if not in film and other applications, over 80% of the total part cost. So it's not just a procurement line item anymore. It's the foundation of every quote your commercial team puts in front of a customer. And if that foundation isn't built on the right things, if it's built on a lagging published index or a market update directly from your supplier, where there is incentive for the market to be framed in against you and in their favor, and you're quoting in a world that's very difficult and detached from reality. Not because your team isn't working hard that sometimes you'll lose. It's because the information to do it better hasn't been available over the years, and that combined with putting the right process and people and technology in place can really help change the game. So it's that information asymmetry is where margin has quietly disappeared and compounds every quarter. The companies that have closed the gap really consistently do three things well. One, they anchor their cost modeling into real verified transaction data, not nominations, not proxies, not survey numbers, actual prices. Two, they have a forward-looking view and outlook where costs are heading, not where they've been. So they built that into the quote and the expiration of the quote process. And third, they close the loop between the procurement team and the commercial team in a very intimate way. When the market moves, the whole business is responding. It doesn't take months or quarters to lag and impact the business. That's the standard, and it is achievable in this space. So let me give you a quick read on where the market is, because it's a week that illustrates this point pretty on point. Crude oil pulled back at the end of the week. We did see WTI, West Texas Intermediate, drop below $95 a barrel on the ceasefire news. You might be tempted at face value to read that as a sign the resin market's going to soften here. It isn't, and not yet. And here's why. Polyethylene is still tracking for an increase. I mean, there's nominations of up to 30 cents a pound for April. We're likely to see roughly half of that. And the March ACC data showed inventory draws and demand rates up, which means that the structural floor is fairly firm. In polypropylene, we're looking at the fourth consecutive month of increases. PVC, with Formosa declaring force majeure, we're certainly in a tight position in that market. And ABS is looking at close to 30 cents a pound of increases with feedstocks, again, driving that activity. On the PET front, MEG is sold out. And so with crude oil easing, that particular feedstock hasn't got the memo that it's time to mellow off. So it's exactly the kind of week where having real transaction data and monitoring the signals and not the noise is what's going to matter for you. If your team is reading the crude pullback as a reason to delay, I could be walking into a pretty expensive month here and the rest of this month in May. So here's what I'd offer. If you run a sales organization or operations at a plastic processor, injection molding, extrusion, film, blow molding, you want to see what your actual cost position looks like against the real market. It's a conversation that's really worth having, especially right now. And I'm not going to say it's because you're doing anything wrong. It's because we can talk through data you probably haven't had access to or haven't thought to review, and we'll let you decide what to do with it. We built ResinSmart for exactly this reason, and it gives buyers the same quality of market intelligence that has always lived on the other side of the table. It changes what you can do in a negotiation, and the posture in this environment is essential. What your commercial team is able to do when they're building a quote, it's important right now. Reference the link below, 20 minutes, no pitch deck, just talking through the data. It's been Michael Workman with Resin Market Moves. Purchase wisely and have a great week. Thanks.